Hey, my name is Gabby, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a 100k Q&A video. I'm really excited for this video because it's been a long time since the last time that I did a Q&A, and I thought because it's been such a long time it would be really nice to like sit down with you and kind of catch up and talk about life and talk about booktube and books and all of the things. God, I don't even know where to begin because I got so many incredible questions from you both here on YouTube and on my Instagram stories, so thank you so much to everybody who sent in a question, and I apologize if I'm not able to get to it because I want to keep this as brief as I can. But I guess the first big thing that I want to talk about is my big life update, because I actually recently just got a new job in a bookstore. So if you didn't know, I've actually been doing YouTube as my full-time job for about 5-ish years now, like since the end of 2021. If you don't know my history, then like I'll just give you a brief rundown, because I used to be the general manager of this pizza restaurant, and I was the general manager of this restaurant for about like 3 to 4 years, but I had worked in the restaurant for about 5 years. And then towards the end of 2021, I was starting to feel like my YouTube channel was really taking off and I wanted to put more time and energy into my channel as opposed to the restaurant. So at the very end of 2021, I decided to leave my restaurant job and pursue YouTube full-time, which I have absolutely loved being able to do YouTube as my full-time job for the last couple of years. And it was actually when I left my restaurant job, like that was the time when I started my Patreon, because I finally had the time to do all of these things like weekly reading sprints and movie nights and offering exclusive videos and all kinds of things like that. So I had YouTube going on full-time and I had the Patreon, which is like basically adding on another full-time job. And I am so incredibly grateful that I got to do YouTube as my full-time thing for as long as I was able to, because 5 years is a really long time to be able to do this. And I just want you to know that there was never a day that I ever took this for granted. And anytime people interact with me online and engage with my videos, subscribe to my channel, comment on videos, like it genuinely means the world to me. But I've really been struggling with YouTube, especially over these last couple of months. YouTube has been making a lot of changes to their platforms that I think are really harming a lot of different content creators. I mean, just as an example, you know, last September, YouTube changed its algorithm, and I feel like because of that, it's really been affecting creators who are posting more like long form content, because now it seems like YouTube is really prioritizing YouTube shorts, and like the homepage is looking a lot different than it used to. I don't know, I've watched so many videos of other creators talking about the different issues with YouTube's new algorithm and how it's really harming creators because our views are going down. And so over these last couple of months, you know, like I especially started to notice it in December of last year. I was like, wow, like my views are not what they used to be. And it was starting to get to a point where I was questioning, like, should I really be doing this full time anymore? Like, it was starting to make me feel a little bit miserable inside. And I feel like I actually felt a breaking point earlier this year around like March, because that was the first time on my channel that I had ever experienced negative growth. And it really just made me feel so sad, because it's like your YouTube channel is something that you pour so much of yourself into. You know, I talk about this all the time, how like booktube specifically feels like extra work at times, right? Because you're not only doing all the things that another YouTuber does, like filming and editing and all of these things that take a lot of time, but you also have to be reading in order to have content. So I feel like booktube especially is something that you really have to pour so much of yourself and your time into. And so to see your channel dying, like it felt like my channel was dying at that point, and I felt really sad about it. And so I kind of reached a breaking point in March, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, or at least not as my full-time thing. You know, I feel like there is a lot of pressure with doing YouTube as your full-time job, because you have to care about the numbers because this is your income. And I think in a lot of ways, it was just starting to make me feel a little bit miserable, to be honest, and I wasn't loving it as much as I used to. And I was really struggling at that time trying to figure out like what I wanted to do from here and where I wanted to go. And it was around this time when all of this was going on when I got jury duty, and I got assigned to a case that lasted for 2 weeks. And at first I was like, oh no, like, oh my God, because I was so anxious at the idea of doing jury duty, but it actually ended up being like the best thing ever, because it really distracted me from everything that was going on with YouTube, and it kind of like gave me a purpose again. And then while I was doing the jury duty thing, I actually saw an advertisement that one of my local indie bookstores was hiring, and I just decided to go for it because I was like, you know what, I've always wanted to work in a bookstore. Like that's always been one of my big life goals. And you know, I even told myself when I was leaving the restaurant, I was like, I don't know what my future looks like. I want to do YouTube for as long as it's making me happy. I want to do YouTube for as long as I can. But like if I'm no longer finding joy and fulfillment in doing YouTube full time, then like I need to know when is the time to make a change in my life. And it all just kind of happened perfectly. Like all of the stars aligned. Did end up getting the job at the bookstore, and I've been training in the bookstore at the end of May all the way through June. And it just feels so incredible. Like I genuinely feel like I made the best choice for myself, and I'm so happy for this next chapter of my life. And if you were wondering, nothing's really going to be changing here on my YouTube channel. I mean, the only big difference that you might notice is that I'm probably going to be posting a little bit less than I have been, because regularly here here on YouTube, I feel like I've been posting anywhere from like 6 to 8 videos per month, but I feel like now I might be cutting back to like 4 to 6 videos per month. So you might be seeing my face a little bit less, but I'm still gonna be trying to upload at least once a week. I just really needed to make this change for myself because I feel like by doing this, it's gonna make YouTube a lot more fun for me again, because I feel like there's just way too much pressure on me right now with YouTube being like my full-time thing and like my only source of income. It adds a lot of stress, and I don't want to feel that stress anymore. So I feel like working part-time in a bookstore while doing YouTube full-time is going to be the balance that I need in my life. And so that's my big life update. That's what's happening with me. I'm so excited about it, especially like this specific bookstore that I'm working at. Like all of the people are so incredible. I've also been filming some monthly vlogs over on my Patreon. I know I did get a question that was like, why don't you do the monthly vlogs anymore? And I have still been posting a lot of monthly vlogs over on Patreon. I mean, granted, they aren't exactly monthly anymore. I've only been posting these kind of monthly vlogs every couple of months over on Patreon, but I still have been posting the monthly vlogs over there. And like the main reason why I've been posting them over there as opposed to my main channel is for a few different reasons. I feel like sometimes my monthly vlogs can be like incredibly vulnerable, and I'll be like sharing some really personal things, and I just don't really feel that comfortable sharing those things on such a big platform anymore. But also because at the time when I was posting my monthly vlogs, like they were just not doing very well, at least in terms of like views compared to my other videos. So like it just didn't make sense to continue posting them to my main channel when they weren't performing very well. But I still wanted to make those kinds of monthly vlogs, so I have moved those over to Patreon for now. But anyway, to jump into the bulk of this Q&A video, I've kind of like divided the questions into different sections. So I will include timestamps below if there's like certain things that you are more curious about. So since we've already kind of been talking about booktube, let's just continue with some of the booktube questions that I got, because I did get asked quite a bit about like the pros and cons of being a booktuber, or like what are the challenges of being a booktuber. And right now I feel like the biggest challenge of being a booktuber is that I feel like there are so many things that are outside of my control. Like I hate the fact that YouTube can just one day like decide to change the algorithm, and it really affects me as a creator, and there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, I feel so lucky to be a part of this community, and I've built so many incredible friendships because of this community and had so many different opportunities in my life because of this YouTube channel. I know there was a question about like how has booktube changed your life, and like, oh my gosh, booktube has changed my life in so many ways. I think more than anything, this community of people that I've met here on booktube has really impacted my life for the better, you know, especially with things like starting the book troop book club and like having Summerween as a readathon. Like anytime I get to have these kind of events where we're like doing something together, essentially, it just makes me feel so connected to this community. And you know, really, bookish people are the best people, and I genuinely feel like this community that I've built here on YouTube, like you all are some of the nicest people I've ever gotten the chance to speak to. It's just so lovely anytime I get to engage with the community, and I feel so lucky to have a platform that just draws people that are so cool. I did get a few questions asking about like why I started my channel in the first place. If you didn't know, I actually did start my channel back in February 2015 was the first time that I posted to YouTube, but I didn't really start taking YouTube very seriously until like 2018. But at the time in 2015, I was becoming a very avid reader. It was actually after I read Gone Girl in like early 2014. After reading Gone Girl, my love for reading just like absolutely exploded, and I read like 70 books that year, where like typically before 2014, I would maybe read like 10 to 15 books a year. Like I was still an avid reader, but like not nearly in the same way. And I just really wanted a place online where I could talk about all the books I was reading, because at the time I didn't know anybody in my real life who was also a reader, and I didn't really have anybody to talk to about books. So that was the only reason why I started my YouTube channel, because I wanted somewhere to talk about books. I got this one question that was asking what was my favorite video that I made on my first year of YouTube, which is a really great question, and I wish I had a better answer for you, because to be honest, oh my gosh, those videos were hard to watch. Like they were so cringy for my first year on YouTube. I clearly had not yet built the confidence with like talking to a camera, and I clearly didn't know what I was doing on my first year of booktube, but like everybody's got to start somewhere. But I don't even think I would have a favorite video from my first year on booktube, because the only videos I was really posting on my first year on booktube were like wrap-ups and like book tags. I think I made like a reading vlog for the booktubeathon, but it was only 3 minutes long. Like my content looked very, very different on my first year on booktube, and like I don't recommend watching any of those videos. No offense to younger me. I also did get a question about the book troop, kind of asking if we're ever gonna go back to like the 12-month book club as opposed to the quarterly book club that we're doing now. And I just wanted to say I'm so sorry if you miss the monthly book club, but I don't think I'm ever going to go back to the monthly book club, because it just got to be way too much for me. You know, setting up those live shows, trying to figure out which books we're gonna be reading every single month, like there was so much thought and so much effort that went into all of those live shows. I had been running the book club as a 12-month book club for so many years that I just completely burnt myself out on it. And especially now that I'm gonna be balancing another part-time job on top of doing YouTube, I just don't think I'm gonna have the time and the energy to do a monthly book club again. And so for now, the book troop is going to stay a quarterly book club, and I'm actually going to like reevaluate at the end of 2026 if the book troop is something that I want to do again in 2027. I'm just kind of like taking it one day at a time because the book troop live shows, they do take so much out of me. I know you probably think because I've been doing these live shows so long that it's probably like no big deal now, but I still get so anxious about them. I just put so much pressure on myself when it comes to the book club, and I want to ask questions that are interesting and I want to do a good job. But I feel like sometimes when I'm watching back the book troop live shows, I'm like, oh my god, I should have asked this, or like I should have done that. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on me when I'm live on the internet and it's not my favorite way to talk about books. So like I don't think I'm gonna be doing the monthly thing anymore. You know, there are so many other book clubs out there that do the monthly thing that like I don't feel like I need to contribute one of my own book clubs with that anymore. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the questions that are all about like books and reading specifically. One of the questions that I got was like, what was a book that like genuinely altered your brain chemistry? And for that, I think I have two answers. One of them is actually going to be Wild by Cheryl Strayed, which I know probably seems like such a random thing, but genuinely this nonfiction book, when I read it for the first time, it was like something just like clicked in my brain. And I feel like ever since reading this book, I haven't been the same. I know that's so dramatic to say. There was something about the way that this book described nature and like that feeling of connecting with nature. I have felt so differently about nature ever since reading this. I never used to be the kind of person that cared much about like going outside. I remember that there was a time where I would say, why would I ever go outside to read? Like I can just do that indoors. And I genuinely feel like ever since reading this book, it has completely like changed my perspective. And now I'm definitely the kind of person that enjoys, you know, being outdoors, being in the park. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm definitely still not the type of person that enjoys hiking, and especially like the Pacific Crest Trail. Like I'm not gonna go out there and like start hiking now, but it really changed my perspective in the sense that like now I really appreciate nature so much more. And then another book that altered my brain chemistry has got to be We Spread by Ian Reid. Like this book just impacted me so much emotionally to the point where like I don't know if I could ever read this again because of how much this book meant to me when I read it. This book just like really means the world to me, and it really like triggered something in me when I read it that it altered my life forever. I also had a question that was like, what's a book that reminds you of your mom? Which is so cute. I love that question. And I think actually the book that reminds me the most of my mom is actually The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, mostly because this is the first book that I ever really like got her to read once I had become like a really passionate reader. And this was like one of the first books that we really like bonded over as adults. And it was really cute because my mom's actually reread Evelyn Hugo 2 times. Like now she considers it to be one of her favorite books of all time. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I also got a question about my favorite plot twist of all time, which like how am I even supposed to answer that? I have no idea. I ended up choosing 2 books. Like one of them is like more recent, and then the other one is like maybe one of my all-time favorites, because I will never forget the feeling that I had when I read Behind Her Eyes for the first time, and this was back in like 2017 probably. The plot twist in this absolutely shook me to my core. Like this was a crazy twist, and I just love it so much. I think about it all the time. But then a more recent favorite book that had some of my favorite plot twists ever is actually My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. I just had so much fun with this book, like a ridiculous amount of fun. And I feel like this is one of the first thrillers in a long time where I had that feeling of like shock over some of the plot twists, and I love that. I did get a few questions that were asking about like reading slumps and like how do I push through a reading slump. Honestly, I don't know if I have great advice for this because, you know, sometimes when you're in a reading slump, I feel like you should just maybe take a little bit of a break from reading. But also like if you're desperate to push through that reading slump, I would recommend maybe listening to an audiobook if you don't do that, like maybe changing the format that you're reading. Or maybe if you're interested in like manga or graphic novels, you can do something like that feels like short so you can like feel accomplished. Or maybe even a novella, like something that's a little bit shorter in length. Or, you know, something that I've always liked to do when I'm in a reading slump is rereading one of my favorite books because I never make the time to reread. And if you're in a reading slump, it's the perfect time to reread and like remind yourself why you love reading so much. I also had a few questions that were kind of asking about like, do you still enjoy reading as much as you used to now that this is like your full-time thing? And it's weird, you know, because I've really gone through a lot of phases with my reading in the last couple of years. There was a time around 2023, there was like a 6-month period where I was just kind of like, I don't really want to read. I'm just not really in the mood the way that I used to be. And I went through this like really weird phase where I just like did not want to read, and I really had to push through that period. It was a really weird time in my life, but then eventually it was like 1 month, everything changed again, and I got really obsessed with reading all over again. I feel like it's very normal to go through phases in your life where you're like falling in and out of love with hobbies, but I feel like it's difficult because my hobby is something that I'm now doing for a job. So it does feel like there's a little bit more pressure on like, wow, I hope I'm still enjoying reading because this is what I'm doing here on YouTube. But I still do go through phases in and out where I'm like kind of falling in and out of love with reading. I mean, luckily I've never gone through a phase like that like I did in 2023 where like I just wasn't feeling the books for like like months, but I still pushed through that time anyway, and I was still able to read books. And like luckily these days, if I ever get that feeling like, wow, I'm just not really in the mood to read, it usually doesn't last for more than like a week, and then I'm able to just kind of like work through it and then fall back in love with reading all over again. Ooh, I love this question. I also got the question that was like, how has your reading changed over time? Or like, are there things that you used to love that now you're like absolutely not, or like vice versa? And my answer to that is yes and no. I mean, I don't think my reading taste has changed too much over time, in the sense that I've always been a big reader of like horror, romance, and thriller. Like those have always been my favorite genres and probably always will be my favorite genres. But in terms of like specifically what I enjoy, I do think my reading taste has changed a lot over time. I mean, just as an example, you know, like 10 years ago, like one of my favorite romance books was a student teacher romance. And now I'm like, oh my god, ew, jail, I don't want to read that. Or even like a few years ago, I probably would have said like, I never want to read second chance romance books like ever. And like that's kind of still true, but then after reading something like The X-Vows, this is one of my favorite romance books of all time. And this is a second chance romance. And so it has really like changed my perspective. Like I don't hate second chance romances as much as I used to. I also feel like these days I am reading a lot more sci-fi than I used to, and a lot less young adult, because I did used to read a pretty good amount of young adult, you know, when I was younger. And I feel like as I'm getting older, I'm reading less and less young adult, and I'm reading a lot more sci-fi than I used to, because I feel like I've been falling in love with sci-fi even more ever since reading Project Hail Mary back in 2021. The next one is from my friend Jessie, and they were asking like, who is a character that you see yourself in? And I also wanted to tie that into the question that was like, if your life was turned into a book, what would it be called? Because my answer is going to be the same for both of these questions, and that is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I know this probably comes as a surprise to absolutely nobody. Kath is one of the most relatable characters I've ever read, and like there's a reason why I've read this book like 5 times, and there's a reason why I love this book as much as I do, and it's mainly because of how connected I feel to Kath as a character. Like anytime I read this book, I feel right at home. It's like we share the same brain, and I just love this book so much, and I don't know if I've ever related to a character more than I relate to Kath from Fangirl. And I also think if there was like a book title that I had to be like, this is the title of my life, it would be Fangirl, because I really do feel like being a fangirl is such a huge part of like my identity and like who I am as a person. I mean, clearly I get really passionate about the things that I love, probably to an annoying amount. Like I probably drive people crazy when I talk about something that I get obsessed with, and I'm definitely the kind of person that like if I get obsessed with something, whether it's a book, movie, TV show, whatever, like you can guarantee that I'll be looking up edits on TikTok, I'll be reading all the fan fiction. And I mean, just the fact that I created this booktube channel because I'm such a fangirl of books and I've been able to like make this my job, I feel like fangirl is like the perfect title for myself. Like I don't know what else it would be. So naturally, I feel like this would be the perfect time to transition into some of the like fangirl type of questions that I got. Some of the questions that I got were related to BTS. Like one of them was asking about if I got tickets to the BTS tour, and like sadly, no, I didn't, because they're not coming to Seattle. It's so unfortunate. Like they're not coming anywhere close to me. You know, in any other year, I probably would have like dished out the money to like go and travel to LA or to Vegas to go and see them. But because I do have some expensive travel plans coming up later this year, I didn't want to like drop a ton of money. So unless they are coming to Seattle, like I know that there's a chance that they could announce more tour dates for 2027. And if they do come to Seattle, I will definitely do everything within my power to get tickets to see them. I also got a question about like, what are my top 5 current favorite BTS songs, which this question is made more difficult because of their most recent album. I really loved the new BTS album that came out earlier this year. I know not a lot of BTS fans felt the same. I know there was like a lot of criticism for this album, but I personally just like loved it so much. And I think my 5 current favorite songs, I mean 2.0 is probably like my top favorite. Like I can't get enough of that song. I'm obsessed. But I also really love Body to Body. I love Swim. I love Please. And then probably Hooligan would be in my top 5. And it's so cute because Hooligan is like my mom's #1 favorite. Like my mom is obsessed with Hooligan. I did get a question that was kind of like asking like how I got into K-pop, and it's so crazy because I actually got into K-pop because of a video that I was doing. I think this was back in early 2022. I was making a video that was like reading horror books from South Korea. And then in the video, I was doing like an experiment where I would like try different Korean things, which included food, but it also included like listening to the biggest K-pop group. And in that video, I listened to BTS music for the first time. And after doing that video on YouTube, it like absolutely changed my life because I got really into K-pop after that. I mean, granted, BTS is still the only group that I'm like really into when it comes to K-pop, but still, it was like a very life-changing thing to happen to me. I got a question about Gilmore Girls too, asking about who's my favorite character on Gilmore Girls, and like without a doubt, it is absolutely Lorelai Gilmore. I adore this woman, but I also do really love Luke's character in the show, and like I am the biggest Lorelai and Luke shipper. Oh my god, who cares about whatever Rory's doing in the show? Like I don't care. I am here for Luke and Lorelai. They were so cute, like one of the best slow burn romances I've ever seen in my my life. I did get a question about Off Campus, like the new TV show that's been airing, and asking if I've watched it, because I was a really big fan of the book series back in the day. You know, like The Deal by Elle Kennedy was one of my favorite books of all time. I've watched the first episode of Off Campus, but like I couldn't really get into it. I don't know, I just wasn't really feeling the chemistry between the actors. I don't really know if I like the casting choices that they made for the show, to be honest. I just can't seem to get invested, but like my sister has watched the entire show and she's trying to convince me to watch it, which is crazy because we always have such different opinions when it comes to these romance shows. You know, because I was such a big fan of like The Summer I Turned Pretty and Heated Rivalry, and then my sister didn't really care for either of those shows, and then now she's really liking Off Campus, but like I can't seem to get into it. So like I don't know what's going on, but like I just wasn't really feeling it after the first episode, so I guess you'll have to let me know if it's worth continuing if I didn't like the first episode. I also did get some Taylor Swift questions, like one of them was asking about like, how do you feel about The Life of a Showgirl now that it's been out for a while? And unfortunately, you know, my opinions on The Life of a Showgirl have not changed. I really don't care for this album, and it's actually so heartbreaking. Like I was so upset that I didn't like this album. I did post an entire TikTok, you know, like back in October last year that was kind of talking about my issues with the album, so I can have that link down below if you wanted to hear more of my thoughts on that. But I am so bummed. You have no idea. It's really broken my heart that like I feel this way about a Taylor Swift album. Like I actively don't listen to it and I don't really like it. I don't like the feeling that this album gives me. I'm like, where's the showgirl vibes? This is giving housewife. And I don't know, there was just something about this album that like really rubbed me the wrong way. It's like in our current political climate and like in this current world, this album is just giving out of touch and I just really can't get into it. So I'm still not really enjoying the Life of a Showgirl album. And then I got another question that was like, if you had to rank all of Taylor's albums, how would you rank them? And I think The Life of a Showgirl would be at the very bottom for me. Like I feel like that would rank last. But my top 3 albums are still the same. I think my number 1 is Midnights, and then number 2 is Reputation, and then number 3 is Folklore. I did get a question that was asking like, what is your ultimate comfort movie or TV show? And like growing up, I probably would say Friends is like one of my ultimate comfort TV shows because that's a show that I really grew up with, and like to this day I still love it so much. I watch it all the time. It's one of those shows that like I know it so well. I've seen it so many times, but honestly these days I feel like a comfort show for me has got to be Supernatural, if I'm being honest, which I know that sounds like a weird thing to say that that's like your comfort show, but because I've been watching Supernatural for the first time over these last like 5 months and I just finished watching the show, I feel this like hole in my chest now that you would not believe. Like this has really become like my comfort show, and I think it's because the characters on Supernatural are so comforting to me. And I did get a question too asking about like who are my favorite characters on Supernatural, like outside of just Sam, because I'm very vocal about the fact that like I am a Sam Winchester girl, and like Sam is definitely my favorite character on the show, but that's for like so many reasons, because I do feel like Sam's character is kind of like a unicorn when it comes to like men who are written on television, because there's something about his character, like I just love how like sensitive and how like empathetic he is, and he's so like smart and educated, and I just adore the way that his character is written. Like Sam is such a freaking sweetheart and he's been through so much in Supernatural, and I just want to give him a hug. You know, besides Sam, I do love so many of the characters on Supernatural. Like it's such a great show. I love Dean's character, obviously. I love Cass. I love Cass. Cass is just so awkward and so funny, but I also really love Bobby. I really love Crowley. I really love Rowena too. Like she's definitely one that grew on me so much, and like by the later seasons I loved Rowena. And also Jack, oh my god, like Jack doesn't come into the show until much later, but like Jack is a god tier character. I did get a question from Megan that was asking like, what show are you going to be watching after Supernatural? And you know, at first we thought we were going to watch Dawson's Creek, but we got about like 5 episodes in and we were both just kind of like, I don't know. Dawson's Creek was just feeling a little bit too young. I feel like if I'm going to watch a show about teenagers, like I need there to be more interesting plot than just like who's fucking who. So I don't know, we couldn't really get into Dawson's Creek, so instead I think we're starting on the X-Files. We actually just watched the first 2 episodes last night at the time that I'm filming this, and it's going very well. Like I'm already really invested in the X-Files, so I think that's gonna be the one we're watching next, and I'm so excited. I did get a question about like what are my top 5 favorite TV shows of all time, and like this is such a tough question. You have no idea because I'm such a big TV show person now. I mean, I've always said that like my favorite TV show of all time is Breaking Bad because that's one that I watched and it like absolutely rocked my whole fucking world, and I've rewatched Breaking Bad so many times. But I also think these days, I think I would also put like Schitt's Creek in my top 5. That is such a comforting show to me. And nowadays, I would probably include like The Vampire Diaries would probably make it into my top 5. Honestly, probably Supernatural because of how obsessed I am with it. You know, back in the day, I would have said The Walking Dead was like one of my top favorite shows. at least like the first 5 to 6 seasons of The Walking Dead, I was obsessed. I also loved Stranger Things for the first couple of seasons. I don't know, it's really hard to pick favorites. Like I've seen so many amazing shows. Like I want to add Dexter onto that list. I want to add Friends onto that list. I also got a question about fanfics specifically. They said, you've mentioned reading fanfiction. Do you read on AO3? And if so, any fics that you would recommend? And like, yes, I typically only read fanfictions on AO3 because I feel like that's the platform that's like the easiest to use. And I don't have any fics that I would recommend necessarily, but just know that if I'm reading anything on AO3, it has to be gay. Like when it comes to like Supernatural, it's like I'm reading Dean and Cass. And even when it comes to like Gilmore Girls, fanfics I'm reading for Gilmore Girls are like Dean and Jess. Like who needs Rory when you have Dean and Jess right there and you could read about them? Or like even the Vampire Diaries, like I have read some fanfics that are about like Damon and Elena. Usually I'm more invested in the ones that are gay, like Klaus and Stefan. And as a Sam Winchester girl, I really wish that there were more fanfics that were about Sam specifically. Like if you have any recommendations, send them my way. And then I also wanted to talk about travel because I did get a handful of questions that were talking about like travel and like, do I have any upcoming trips planned and things like that. And I'm really excited that I do have a trip coming up this October. I actually ended up signing up for my friend Gavin's trova trip, kind of like the trip that we went on to Japan together back in 2023. My friend Gavin has this trova trip coming up that's going to be to South Korea this October, and me and my friend Brittany ended up signing up to go. And I'm so excited. You have no idea. Like South Korea is such a bucket list place for me to go, and the fact that I'm actually going to be going this October is going to be so freaking life-changing. So I did get a question that was very specifically like, will you be coming to Singapore with Gavin? Which like, no, we won't be going to Singapore. We will be going to South Korea, but I would also love to go to Singapore. Like that is definitely a place that is like at the top of my bucket list for like places that I want to go. So like, who knows, maybe me and Gavin can like make this a thing in the future. I also did get another question that was asking if like me and Gavin have anything planned, kind of like the Sleepy Hollow thing that we did last year, which like, no, not really, because the South Korea thing is going to be happening in October, but it's not exactly going to be like a spooky vlog. But like, I would love to do something like that with Gavin again. Like you have no idea how much fun I had on that Sleepy Hollow trip. I think about it all the time. Me and Gavin were like joking about wanting to move there while we were visiting Sleepy Hollow because of how much we just loved the vibes there. So traveling with Gavin is like genuinely one of my favorite things to do. He's such a good person to travel with, and I just always have the best time. I also did get a question about like whether or not I would ever host my own trova trip again, because if you didn't hear, I was going to be hosting my own trova trip back in like 2024, and we were going to be going to Italy. But then the trip didn't end up happening because I had too many people that like pulled out within the 90 days before the trip was supposed to happen. And so because I didn't have enough signups at that time, Trova Trip had to cancel the trip. And I was really devastated about this back in 2024. Like that really sucked. And so it kind of did leave like a sour taste in my mouth. Like I don't know if I would ever try to host my own Trova Trip again. I mean, of course, it's something that I would really love to do. And I just don't know if that's something that I see myself trying to do again in the future, but I'm not completely closed off to the idea. And then to jump into some of the more like miscellaneous questions where like I wasn't really sure where to put these, but one of them was kind of asking about like asexuality. I don't think I ever went through a moment in my life where I ever had to like come out as asexual. And I feel like it was something that I discovered about myself very slowly. It was like back when I was in high school, I had always thought like, oh my God, something's wrong with me. And like, why am I not obsessed with sex the way that all of my peers seem to be? Until I started to learn about asexuality. And this was probably like when I was like a senior in high school. I was starting to feel a lot more seen by that, but I don't think it was until, I think it was like 2020 when I first read Loveless by Alice Oseman that it like really clicked with me, because reading from the perspective of a character who was asexual, like that absolutely changed everything for me, because then it was like confirmed. You know, it's like I had always suspected like maybe I'm asexual, like I don't really know. I just didn't know enough about it. But like after reading Loveless, I was like, holy shit, like I had never felt more seen in my life. I also got a question about my ASMR channel and kind of like asking if I'm ever going to be posting ASMR videos again, because I'm so bad about being consistent over there. I've had this ASMR channel ever since like 2021, I think, and I've posted very sporadically over there over these last couple of years, and I would love to get back into posting ASMR. I just need to find the time to actually do it. I feel like right now I have like a lot going on in my life and all of these different things that I'm trying to balance. So like the ASMR thing has really been put on the back burner, but that is something that I would like to get back to eventually. I also did get a question about like podcasting and like if that's something that I would ever do. You know, for a very brief period, me and my sister did bring back our Film Queens podcast, which is a podcast that's all related to talking about like movies and TV shows and pop culture. But even trying to do the podcast again. Like, it is so much work to have a podcast, and me and my sister have just been so busy with like other things going on in our life, and so we just decided to put the podcast on hold again because it really is just so much work. And to be honest, I don't know if I like how a podcast is compared to like YouTube. Like, I feel like I'd rather put all of my time and energy into like YouTube as opposed to a podcast. I also did get a question about like growing up in California and moving to Washington, because if you didn't know, I'm originally from Torrance, California. Like, that's kind of where I was raised until I was about 7 years old, and then I ended up moving to Corona, California, and I lived in California until I was about like 20 years old, and then that's when I moved to Washington with my family, and now I've been in Washington for about 11 years, and I loved growing up in California. I look back on it very fondly now because California was such a wonderful place to grow up, even though it definitely made me the kind of person who like hates the sun, because especially where I grew up in Corona, like it is hot out there. It's basically like the desert type of vibe, and so because it was just hot all year long, it really made me like hate the warmer weather. But then moving to Washington was actually like the best thing that could have happened to me, because Washington is definitely the kind of place where like we experience all 4 seasons here, and that's something that I never had growing up. So it was actually so wonderful. Like, I love the summers now because they're not as hot in Washington compared to the summers that I had in California. And I also just like love the fall even more because I feel like in Washington we actually have a real fall, you know, because where I grew up in California, like we never really had a real fall. It was really hot. So I love the fact that I live in Washington now, and I don't think I could ever move back to California. Like, I love it here so much. I also got a question about if I still use my Hobonichi planner, which like, yes, I do. I haven't been using the daily pages as much, but I've still been using the monthly calendars and like the weekly spreads almost every single week, and I just really love filling this thing out. It brings me so much joy. I also got this question that said, you mentioned that you are Mexican. Is it just your dad's side, and do you speak Spanish? So yes, it is just my dad's side that is Mexican. My dad's mom was actually from Mexico and she spoke Spanish, and then my dad's dad was from Oklahoma and he did not speak Spanish. And so my dad, when him and his brother were raised, like neither of them learned Spanish growing up. And so because my dad never learned Spanish, I never learned Spanish, but my dad is half Mexican and I'm a quarter Mexican. And you know, even though I took like 3 years of Spanish in high school, I still don't know as much as I should. I also did get some questions that were kind of like, tell us about your new job, and like, other than the guaranteed income, like what are you most looking forward to with this new job? And honestly, like I am just so looking forward to like feeling more connected to a community again. You know, I feel like that's been something that's really hard about doing YouTube full time, is that I'm always so like isolated, you know, like I'm doing everything by myself. And sometimes I can get that like cabin fever where like I'm just at home all day, you know, like I'm still living with my parents right now. And it's like I'm always just here at the house and I'm feeling very isolated because a lot of my closest friends aren't living that close to me anymore. Like I've had a lot of friends that have moved recently. And so I've just been feeling kind of like lonely and just kind of like on my own doing this YouTube thing. And I think the thing that I'm already looking forward to the most is like making new friends and like having a place to go where I'm like talking to other people every single day. I know that sounds like such a silly thing to look forward to, but I think if you've ever had the kind of job where you're working from home and you're spending a lot of time alone, you'll probably understand what I mean, because I've really missed that kind of like day-to-day, like going into somewhere and having other people to check up on. And I feel like because I'm gonna be working in a bookstore, you know, like I mentioned, bookish people are like some of the best people on this earth. And I've already been like so floored by like how incredible the owners of the bookstore are, how nice the management is. And I genuinely have the feeling like they really care about their employees, which is not always a feeling that I've had in the past when it comes to other jobs that I've had. And so I've already had such a positive experience with like getting to know some of these people. And everybody that I got hired with, like all of the other trainees that are working in the bookstore right now, like everybody is so freaking nice. You know, I was talking about this, how like in all of my previous jobs, I've always been the one who's like the nerd or like the one who's the reader. And like, I don't really have anybody to talk to at work about books because usually I'm like one of the only people who's actually interested in books when it comes to like working a job. But like working in a bookstore is such a different environment because like every single person that I talk to is interested in books, of course. And everybody is such a passionate reader and has so many different things that they can talk about and recommend. So it's like very easy to strike up conversations and like have these friendships with people when you're working in a bookstore together. I just feel so lucky and like so ready for this next chapter of my life, and it's been such a great experience already, and like I'm just getting started. And I did get some questions that were asking about like what tips would I give to somebody that's like just starting out on YouTube. And I think my greatest advice would just be to do this because you love it and not because you're trying to make money off of it, not because you're trying to grow your channel. I feel like YouTube can become very miserable very fast if you do it for the wrong reasons. You know, booktube especially is such a labor of love, like I was saying, because there's a lot of work that goes into a booktube channel. And I think it can become very overwhelming very fast if you're expecting a video to do really well and then it just doesn't. It can feel very discouraging, especially in the beginning. But I feel like if you're doing it because you love it and because you find so much joy and passion in doing it, then I think that's the best thing for you. I know social media was like very different like 10 or 11 years ago now, but like genuinely when I started on booktube, I was barely getting any views per video, and it wasn't until I was like 3 years into doing booktube where I saw any real kind of growth on my channel. So for most people, it's not something that happens overnight, and I feel like I've poured so much into this channel before I ever saw any kind of like numbers or like things happening for me. But I think as long as you're doing it for yourself and your enjoyment, I think there's a lot to enjoy about booktube. And the last question that I have is a really sweet one because it says, if you could talk to younger you when starting YouTube, what would you tell them? Oh my god, that is such a good question. I don't know why it makes me want to like get emotional just thinking about it. Oh my god, this is so stupid. It's actually making me cry. I think it's making me emotional to think about because like when I think about my younger self when I was 20 years old, I was so self-conscious, you know, and like I was so anxious. And like at that age, I was just so worried about everything all the time. And I really took everything to heart. Like anything that people would say about me, I would take it to heart and I would take everything so personally. And I was so sensitive. I mean, clearly I'm still sensitive, but I really think back then, you know, when I was starting my YouTube channel, I was still really figuring out who I was. And I just feel really grateful that like over these 11 years that I've had on YouTube, I feel like I have really figured out who I am. And I've become so much more confident as a person because of my YouTube channel. You know, it really is true what they say about like when you turn 30, you just like stop giving a fuck. Like now, if I get like hateful comments or like people trying to like bully me or be mean to me, like I literally don't care. Like I can literally just brush it off my shoulder. Like there are so many other things that I'd rather spend my time on. Like I've really come so far in like self-acceptance and like who I am as a person. It's obviously like a wonderful feeling to have now, and I feel so grateful that I've come to this place where I feel so loved and accepted for who I am. But it has been a journey to get here, and I feel like I would just tell my younger self that like everything's gonna be okay, everything's gonna work out. If I could tell my younger self that like one day you're gonna be the general manager of a pizza restaurant, she would be like, bitch, what? Also, one day you're gonna be able to do YouTube full time for your career for like 5 years. She would be like, bitch, what? That's totally nuts. And then if I could also tell her, and one day when you're in your 30s, you're gonna start working at an independent bookstore that you've always wanted to work at. And like one day you're actually going to do the thing and hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, like something that I've always dreamed about. Oh god, sorry. I was not expecting that last question to like make me so emotional because there's just been so much going on recently and like so many things that are happening to me that I've always wanted to happen. The fact that I hit 100,000 subscribers the day before I got a job offer at the bookstore, like it was a really crazy week, and I feel like I've just come so far, and I do wish that I could tell my younger self to like take a deep breath, everything's gonna be fine, and give her a hug. Alright, so sorry about that emotional ending. I was not expecting that, but thank you so much for watching this Q&A. It really means the world to me. Like thank you so much. Like the fact that people are still here tuning into my videos 11 years later, clearly it means the world to me. I want to continue to make videos, and I'll be here on YouTube for as long as you'll have me. But thank you so much for all of your thoughtful questions. It really does mean the world to me, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!